As mentioned in a previous review, the Warhammer 40k games have had a reputation with having a lot of mediocre games dedicated to their universe. Recently, the Warhammer fantasy genre has enjoyed some stellar titles, but 40k apparently still gets to be the underdog. I was pleasantly surprised by the Space Marine game, originally for 360 and PC, and wanted to get into more 40k games. On Steam, the game Space Hulk DeathWing caught my attention with beautiful graphics being showcased, but more importantly, promising first-person combat, a rarity in Warhammer 40k games, which mostly revolves around strategy games. In DeathWing, you play as a librarian, meaning that you won't only feel like a badass space marine with all the weapons at your disposal, but also have access to psychic abilities that even resemble magical powers like a fire tornado you conjure or sending lightning from your hands. My first 30 minutes or so with the game were an awesome experience. The graphics really are impressive, with razor sharp textures and a beautiful lighting model accompanied by volumetric fog and smoke effects. The game really does look like the screenshots, whereas most other games you can clearly see that the screenshots have been touched up a bit compared to the actual game. In the game, you will be accompanied by two other Space Marines, of which one has access to heavy weaponry, and the other is an apothecary, the medic class in the Warhammer universe. You can give simple orders to your teammates like follow, defend here, or heal a particular team member. You can also give them orders to open and clear rooms, Rainbow Six style. The AI does a good job of following you, and their pathfinding never gets them stuck, even though you will traverse through some complex corridors and rooms filled with objects. They also do a good job of defending themselves and doing proper damage, though their weakness is close range and they often die way too easy if an enemy can make its way up close. The storyline is unfortunately quite thin, as you stumble upon a lost-long ship and will enter it and explore its inside to uncover secrets and find long-lost relics. I was under the misunderstanding that it would be quite story-driven, as the first mission, as you enter a lot of eerie hallways, and at first glance, the game's environments were incredibly atmospheric. You quickly stumble upon another squad that has been taken out, and from here, the action starts, as you will be facing large waves of the Xenos threat. And here is unfortunately where the game started to go downhill. What I soon found out was that the game, rather than a story-driven and tightly directed game experience, was a wave-based shooter with barely any story happening during the missions and lackluster objectives that we've seen 1,000 times, like head to this room and scan for a few minutes while you hold off the enemy, or activate 3 switches to open a door while you're being harassed by enemies. Does this then sound like a game that fits the multiplayer shooter type? That is because it is. It became very clear to me that the focus of the game really fell more on multiplayer co-op, as many of the waves of enemies are randomized, though ironically the map always displays icons of where the enemy can spawn. It's not clever randomness either, like with Left 4 Dead, which makes each playthrough feel drastically different. As I played mission after mission, I unlocked many new weapons. Definitely the highlight of the game, as you get access to new bolter types, a power hammer, plasma guns, and even flamers. The game does an excellent job of making you feel like a heavy loaded Space Marine, which is able to unleash absolute hell on its enemies with its awesome weapons of mass destruction. But unfortunately, that is the only thing it does good aside from the pretty graphics. Because even the graphical fidelity could not help the game from feeling very stale, as you quickly realize that the entire game has you run through dark metallic corridors over and over and over again. It's probably one of the reasons why they were able to make the game so pretty, as there's barely any openness except for a room here or there that feels a bit wider. Games like Dawn of War so beautifully show that Warhammer 40k is not just a dark game and has a varied color palette to choose from. Unfortunately here, it all sticks to one theme for the levels and it becomes really boring and stale really quick. The same counts for the enemies. Again, my first encounters with the enemies were a blast, as they were swarming us from everywhere, and the weapons packed such a punch that it felt very satisfying seeing them splatter all over the place as they were trying to hunt us down. But as soon as I found out that their encounters were mostly randomized, I started to really dislike their encounters. I just wanted to get the levels over with and head to the next waypoint. I would always check my map and try to figure out the shortest route towards the next part to finish it as quickly as possible, as none of the battles mattered, since they were just random waves and sooner or later another wave would appear anyway. It's a real shame, because in each level there are relics hidden which you can find that offer some replay value. But the random spawns really discouraged me to explore the whole level. I just wanted to get it over with. The enemies themselves also get rather repetitive over time, even though some new types are introduced throughout the campaign. The game is such a missed opportunity. So much more could have been gotten out of it if a tightly scripted or story-driven experience had been presented. None of the conflicts or encounters matter, and the only story you get in the game are through radio dialogue, a very cheap and easy cop-out for many games. Other wave-based shooters like Payday or Payday 2 have perfected this approach, where they present story or scripted events without cutscenes by things actually happening in the environment around you. Here, that is not the case. DeathWing also offers levels to play where you can level up or unlock new cosmetic or weapon accessories, in which the option you have to randomize the level. This explains the level layout, with all the corridors and small rooms. They are created so that they can be linked in randomized levels later on. I personally really dislike randomized level type games, as they never have the same charm level design wise that a handcrafted one would have. It's just for people who want to do more brainless shooting, which, again, to mention something positive at least, that does feel really good. But then the argument can be made that a game like Doom does this really well too, and actually has cool scripted events, etc. spread throughout. The game is a bit more fun in multiplayer, where you can actually play up to 4 people instead of 3 in the single player, and you can use some other tactics by spreading out more, and it's fun to mix and match weapons. But even then, the staleness of the levels, lack of story, and repetitive enemies makes the overall experience feel stale. In the end, what the game does get right is the graphical fidelity of the engine, which never ceases to amaze, even though the level design does over time, and the feel of the weapons and those that are available. It is quite a good representation of what it would be like in the armor of a Space Marine, though I have read some critique of people who thought you died too quickly in this game for something as mighty as that. But graphics alone cannot save a game, and even though the guns feel great, the action becomes very repetitive and meaningless in a very quick time span, which is why I have to give the game a 6.8. If you were to play this game for multiplayer, you can up the score a little bit, maybe a 7.5, but I think even that is pushing it. But it does offer more than just a single player, including new unlocks and more units to play with and classes to try out. It's a shame that I now also have been introduced to what it means to have played a mediocre Warhammer 40k game. I really wanted to like this game because I wanted to see more developers try their hands at first-person 40k games. But with this one not being such a success, it might take a while before we get another one of those.